Good evening and welcome to our forum here at Putnam Valley High School on the Later Start. Our Later Start proposal, which is under consideration by the Board of Education. We've had two forums, we've had a number of meetings where we've discussed the Later Start process. We started with a 34-member committee, and the transportation consultant who is here this evening, Larry Lee Fiber, to answer questions and also to make a presentation at our board meeting, which follows the forum. So let's go back to the rationale, the first principle, if you will, for the first principle and belief about the need for a later start at our high school. Only one other high school in the region that we know of, and that's Carmel High School, begins at 7:10 in the morning. This means that we have students outside their homes at 6:10. Right now, when I think about tomorrow morning at a 50 below wind chill, it's pretty awful. But we also know from the research over the last several years and by the American Pediatric Society and by the National Institutes for Health, many of these organizations have made it very clear that adolescents have a different sleep cycle than adults. Recently I read that 6 o'clock for us is 4 o'clock in the morning for an adolescent. So there's a different rhythm that they have in their sleep, and we know that sleep is essential for well-being, it's essential for mental health, for physical health, and it is essential for cognitive functioning at the highest level. So our students are coming to school very early. They are dealing with this time frame that makes it difficult for them to learn, and this is the result of research on numerous groups of students throughout the country. And so we, as a school district, where our major purpose is education and the well-being of students, have to look at this issue and take it seriously. Because if there is this set of facts, if you will, facts about development of a student, development of a young person, we have to look at that as our major goal here. That being said, we know this is a major goal. We have to look at all of the issues that surround that as we attempted to take a look at this and consider it for our district. And, you know, every district has unique qualities to it. In our case, we have a very far-flung district. We have a district where, you know, the mileage is significant, and getting the buses here is significant. And a decision was made a number of years ago, obviously, to go to the schedule in order to make it work for the district at the time. That was before a lot of these studies, by the way, well before that. We also know that the amount of change that you can make varies per district, and in this district, the most that we see possible for us to get through the contractual constraints would be a period, a 40-minute change. And that means that you'd start instead at 7:50 rather than 7:10. So it's 10 to 8, and a lot of the research talks about 8 o'clock. It's pretty close. We could get to pretty close to 8 o'clock. The research also says that even a modest change in the school start time, even 30 minutes, produces improvements in measures of student mood, alertness, and health in students. So this could be, in terms of what we're presenting, a very positive result. What are some of the issues that have come up in our discussion? I'm talking about feedback from the community, feedback from teachers, feedback from students. What are some of the issues? Well, one of them is, would buses be overcrowded? Actually not. The buses would be full in this presentation, but they wouldn't be overcrowded. We have the analysis by our transportation folks and our experts in that we would have enough room for our students. And the fact is that the actual travel time for students would be shorter, because in having more buses, and there would be the need for the addition of 4 buses to make this work, we would see with those 4 buses that indeed the travel time, because we'd have shorter runs, would be less than we currently have. So the time on the bus is something to consider as well for students in terms of their well-being. We would also be looking at some more consolidation of stops, not on the big roads where there is, no question that we have to go door to door because of safety, but on some of the neighborhood roads. And really these particular, this kind of a schedule that we would be creating would create neighborhood buses, siblings and neighbors. And you're looking there then at addressing the other issue that comes up, which is having students 5 through 12 on the same buses. That currently 12th graders, most of them do not take the bus. And most high school students, in fact, are driven to school, many of them are. But when we do have 5 through 12 on the bus, and we do see that with students who sometimes come in on the middle school bus or take the middle school bus home, we see fewer problems on those buses because the older students temper many of the behaviors of the younger students. So there's actually not the concern doesn't really emerge as people might anticipate. And the issue, that issue is really one of, we have students on the bus you see every day in your neighborhood, in your particular bus neighborhood. The issue of athletics, that has come up. And that is an issue that we certainly are, concerned about. We want to make sure that our students can participate. And the issue of clubs. Can you do both in the afternoon if you're going to have a shorter 10th period? And there is a lot of conversation about that going on now. And I'm going to ask, in a few minutes, I'm going to ask our leaders of athletics, our athletic director, and our high school principal to talk about their perspective on this, because I think it's very important that the community hear that narrative as well. I think what we're seeing, if we're looking at a change of our actual schedule, our school schedule, which they're also looking at in terms of a rotating schedule and a period in the middle of the day where we'd have lunch and clubs and extra help, these opportunities in the middle of the day, which would indeed lift the concern from the afternoon, make it less of a serious issue for people. The other piece that we talked about, frankly, which is coming up, of course, now as more and more people are hearing about this, there's the issue of finance. You're talking about $240,000. That's a gross number, which probably would be reduced, we don't know how much, but it would be reduced by quite a little because of the fuel savings in the 2-tier versus the 3-tier. But that is something that we know that would concern people. I will say that the actual budget itself would not go up and the tax rate would not go up because we have savings in other parts of our budget that would be applied to this purpose. Now, some people say, why are you investing in transportation and not in a teacher? And we are not going to skimp on teachers. Our budget recommendation includes teachers, and we can do this year because we have a number of retirements, and that has freed up some of our funds so that we can manage the personnel costs. This is not an either-or scenario that we're presenting to the public. I think that's very important. It's not either-or. This is something that we can do, and it is not frivolous. And that's something very important that I want to make clear. We do not consider this a frivolous recommendation. When you're talking about adolescent health, I don't think it's frivolous. When you're talking about adolescent achievement, I don't think it's frivolous. And our goals for our students, that's not frivolous. We see a lot of students who don't come in first period of the day. We see a lot of tardiness, and we see an attendance issue. So with that, I would like to first give people here a chance to ask some questions, and then I would like to ask our high school principal and athletic director to talk about this from their perspective. And we also have our transportation consultant here, so he can answer some of your questions. Does anyone want to start? Would you like to hear from the principal and athletic director? Okay, they'd like to hear from you. Okay, so shall we start with Brian, and then we'll have Sandy. By the way, just for the record, this is the Phi Delta Kappan journal for this month. I came home the other day, and I found this, because I subscribe to this, and what is the topic? Wake-up call, fixing school time. So it's very, very current.
Okay. So where do we begin? A few months ago, we had an open forum in the library, and Dr. Wills and the board asked for a recommendation of and a discussion about what would be the pluses and minuses, potential pitfalls, and things of that nature. And at that time, I thought that a day that ended at 2:30 would be the least impactful for the athletics and clubs and such after school. The reason being that at this point, now that we're in Conference 3 and we travel a fair distance to many of our away games, we have to depart at 2:45. So I said, at that point, a few months ago, anything in that 1:50 to 2:30 time slot needs to be figured out in some way, shape, or form, or will potentially go away or look different. Again, not really advocating either way, just again, these are the potential pitfalls. And that's the same capacity that I'm up here before you now. Whatever the decision may be, it is what it is. But at this point, I just want to kind of lay out there what it might look like if we go beyond 2:30, let's say. Because at one point it was tossed out there, well, we'll just start at 3. And I don't think anything in this scenario can just be kind of tossed out there. We don't want to be guessing and hoping we can fix it when we're in the midst of it. That's usually not how I like to operate anyway. So let's say we, at this point, were to end school, I think it would be at 2:34, and there was no further requirement for a student as far as time restriction or otherwise. Of course, they're always allowed to go to extra help, and coaches are told that they cannot hold a student accountable for missing a practice if they are at extra help. But if we were permitted to start practice or depart at 2:45, there would be minimal impact. There would be some, but it would be minimal. For example, yesterday we hosted the Division II Section 1 dual meet championships for wrestling. The wrestling team has to get into our one gym starting at 3:30 to set that up. If we were to go beyond that 2:45 time slot, you're looking at our varsity and JV programs that utilize that gymnasium either not practicing at all that day or 45 minutes. And as you've probably seen over the last 2 years, we've been trying to pull in and have top tier coaches that want to spend the time with our kids. They spend a lot of off-season time, and if we're to have them come in here and we have a home game that we need to start prepping for, and our varsity coaches that are both away at tournaments today, one's at Somers, one's at Croton, if they were not allowed to practice the day before, or it was a minimal practice the day before, I'm not quite so sure how much they would want to continue in that scenario. You never know. So I would still advocate for really analyzing the the time that is being looked at. Initially, it was 20 minutes. Now it's up to 40, so I think it would be a 2:34 depart time. That could allow the students to get out of their classes, go down, change, get prepped for a game, whatever it happens to be, and either leave at 2:45 or start practice at 2:45, so that if there was a home game, they could leave the court or turf by 4 to allow for the prep for the home game and still have what would be considered somewhat of an adequate practice. Anything moving into the 3 o'clock range as a requirement, I think would impact things much more significantly. What that looks like, it's difficult to say. Some have said, well, other districts do it, and they do. It does happen. But again, they're either going without certain things, or they happen to have 2 courts or 2 fields that they can just shift the practice over and allow for game prep and games to go on while the other varsity programs, JV programs, so on and so forth, take place. So last week when we hosted the 2 duels here, all of modified in the middle school gymnasium was canceled, and we shifted over the 2 varsity teams. So you can do things and be creative like that, but the middle school gymnasium is not ideal for 2 teams that just came back from the county center, practice-wise. So just be aware that as you start to push beyond that 2:30 mark, you will lose something in some capacity.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions on athletics?
I'll be available throughout the meeting, but if there's anything at this time? No. Okay.
Thank you, Brian, and we appreciate that thoughtful report. Ms. Intrieri, would you come up?
Hello. This is something that I've given considerable thought to, and I think when the idea first came up and we talked about how this might impact the middle school or how it might impact the elementary school, I was concerned about that and not really in favor of that, because I didn't think I wanted to do something that would be so disruptive to those 2 buildings. Once we moved beyond that and we started just looking at the high school, and I really started reading the research, I've come to some new ideas and new beliefs about what we are proposing, and I really think it's something that could benefit our students. So if you think about really how schools are even organized, we're really still on an agrarian and industrial model. We start this early in the morning so that kids 100 years ago could get up, plow some fields, harvest some vegetables, and then go to school and then come back. And it's the industrial model with the every 40 minutes, ding, 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 the bell rings. It's really an outdated system. If I could really transform everything and make like a completely different schedule with block schedules and all sorts of different things, that would be fantastic, but that takes lots of planning and time. But that being said, how do you strengthen a school? And I think you have to look at all 600 students. Granted, there are high achievers who are doing very well on the schedule we have now. But I, as the principal, have to look out for all kids. And I really do see a tremendous attendance issue at Putnam Valley High School. It's something that Mr. O'Connor and I are tackling this year, and we're working on it. But I will say now, it's so large, it's difficult to tackle. When you're having, 1,000 lates a month on average, when you're having, the amount of absences we have, where we can't even keep up with the attendance meetings because so many kids are hitting 10, hitting 12. We're not even halfway through the year yet, and it's exorbitant. And when you sit down and you have these meetings with parents, and we have them and we hear all the time, and these are from kids you don't think about. They're the hidden ones who are silent. They don't want to get up in the morning. They don't want to come to school. It's too much. They try, they set every alarm, their parents, they get in huge fights with their parents. They can't get up in the morning. And I think there's a larger number of those kids than we're really thinking about. And in addition to that, it's how do you strengthen mental health in a building? Yes, it's wonderful. We have 2 psychologists, and they're there for like kids when they need that extra support. But the way you strengthen mental health and strengthen kids is by building a positive climate and making it a better place for them to come. And one way you do that is through the research by having them come here a little later. And I do notice from working in, I've been at 4 or 5 other schools, all which started much later than Putnam Valley, and it's not that they don't have attendance problems, it's not that they don't have lateness issues, because all schools face those, but they don't have the degree to which we have them here. So I've been through those attendance meetings, and I'm saying from my personal experience, there is a larger issue here, and I think that a later start could help improve that situation. And I know change is difficult for people. It's always difficult, and people want to stick with the status quo, but again, we're still looking at a model that's agrarian and industrial, and looking at a small fix to make things better. And I think when it comes to our students and looking out for all of them, I think it's a wise investment, because I think, how do you make a school better? You bring everybody up. You don't just look at the top 50, 100 kids. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much to our administrators. And I think at this point we'd like to hear from those who've come tonight. I wish we had a texting process so people could text us questions from, from outside, because it would be nice to talk about some of the issues with people face to face. That's why we have these forums. But I know you're out there listening and watching, and possibly we'll hear from you tomorrow. But we'd like to hear from some of the people who came, please.
I have a question regarding the tardiness, or maybe my question or statement. My feeling is that if you're late, you're always late. And what do we expect to reduce out of that 7,100 tardinesses to? What is the goal? What is to reduce it by how much do we think that would be reduced? Because as a parent, I feel that as a parent, I can't speak for 600 children, that if you're late, you're still going to be late, and you're still the child that doesn't want to get out of bed, and you're still the child that doesn't want to come to school. Okay.
I'll be honest, I can't predict numbers.
Yeah.
I'd be foolish to
Right.
predict a number. But I will say we're not talking about kids who are not, high achievers also come in late, regardless of who they are. I sat and observed an AP class of like 15 kids. I think 6 or 7 came in late, beyond 15 minutes. And it was a regular occurrence. And I don't think it's the same kids every. I think, yes, you have patterns of kids who have issues, but I think it's chronic. I think it's a school-wide issue, not just a certain group of kids. So, but I couldn't predict a number. And I would say, and I forgot to mention, I know people are also concerned about the after-school time. We're looking at a type of schedule that would adopt a common time during the day. So every day, students could seek extra help if they wanted to. We would have a schedule of clubs, so they would actually have more time to access help that they needed for school.
So I'm sorry.
Well, and just as a parent of a child who has trouble getting up in the morning, as a senior this year, he has that first period open, so he's coming in at that later hour, and he's doing much better. He's easier to get out of bed in the morning. His attendance has always been good, but his grade level has just gone through the roof. He's really achieving much better than he has when he was getting up at the crack of dawn.
And it reminds me of another issue we face. We have juniors who sign up for tons of AP classes when they're juniors, and then senior year comes and they realize, oh, I don't have to be here first period in the morning, so they drop all their first period APs so that they can sleep in and come in second period. So I think this would help alleviate that as well.
So, if I could just mention something. I was able to get hold of a presentation by the Dobbs Ferry School District, which was made at NYSBA this year at the School Boards Association. And I actually sent it to the board earlier today. And some of the feedback was interesting. From the students regarding the morning, they mentioned that they felt that they got better grades. This is where they went, again, they did a later start there. They don't have to worry about transportation because they walk to school. It's a small district. Morning is less stressful, more focused and alert in class, more sleep. In their case, they were more walking to school. They didn't have to rush to take a car. From the parents, less stress about bedtime and getting up, easier to get organized in the morning. So some of these issues were noted in a survey that was taken. It wasn't perfect. The responses weren't perfect. Some people did not see a change. And I think for some people, you won't see a change. Those who are great at getting up in the morning, getting out, and that's what Ms. Intrieri is saying, but there are many parents who said that it was a better situation for them, and the kids were themselves said they were getting better grades, so. I'm sorry, Janine.
Well, I know we have on our agenda this discussion, and I know Larry's going to be doing a presentation in just an hour, but, and I think the last proposal by the committee does end at 2:34, I think it was, 2:30, 2:34, so that would be in keeping with Mr. Burrows'
Yes.
limit or ceiling.
It's the same time as the middle school.
The concern I do have, or the concern I hear often, since this conversation has come up, is that what we've been calling the 10th period, what is currently 150 to 230 period of time. And we really eliminate that for students that are participating in athletics.
I'll let Sam,
I figured.
So it's interesting, and I'm still kind of an outsider because I'm new to the district. So this 10th period is interesting to me because other places don't really have what's called a 10th period. I believe the reason that it was first instituted is because the academic eligibility program for athletes gave that time after school where they would go and get signed in, and hopefully they would sit and do some work. We've revised academic eligibility. We're doing other things to support those students, not the necessarily after-school help where they go and sign in and check in and out. As far as how else 10th period is used is also for clubs. That's why the high school faculty is looking at this different schedule that would have this common period during the day where we would actually do a club schedule. It's very hard to do a club schedule now because they meet all the time after school based on athletics, based on other activities, and very difficult to determine who's going to go on what day. If there is a common period during the day when clubs can meet, we can devise a schedule of what clubs meet on certain days and when, so that kids can be in more than one club. They don't have the same conflict that they face now after school. And then as far as extra help from teachers, I do see a lot of students seeking math extra help, either from Mrs. Cefaloni, Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Baker. But actually, Mr. Mahoney and I had just a big conversation about library use after school. And it's honestly mostly just a hangout for kids. That he wants to actually move his extra help to a room so that the few kids who are getting the math help can get that. And again, if we have that common period during the day, there's more teachers who are going to be accessible and students can get more help than what they're receiving now.
Liz, please come up. Liz Broas is our new, I'm sorry. See, this is, sorry, Sarah. But Sarah will also be on our Board of Education, so we welcome you. It's a good opportunity, and you were at the last forum as well.
Yes. So I'm Sarah Bross, the new Vice President of the Student Council. I do have a question regarding the scheduling of certain periods. You mentioned a possible common lunch, and right now I know a number of students that I talk with. I know I have the same problem. I take 9 academic classes. I don't have a lunch right now, and I'm wondering if by adding the lunch period, the common lunch period, would I be forced to take less classes as I am right now? Would a period be eliminated for use academically?
So that's a great question. So thank you. I would say that's a great question. I would say definitively right now, I don't have that exact answer because I just had one meeting with the faculty on what that rotating schedule could look like. I will tell you that one of the things that the faculty is in favor of is having a definite lunch period where every student needs a lunch, because we feel that sometimes kids are under so much pressure and they don't take lunch and they take those 9 classes, and that's not good for student mental health. And we would rather have you focus on and what colleges are looking for, which is something that you're passionate about and areas that you're passionate about, and see that authenticity that I'm in physics and I'm in science classes because that's what I love, than trying to take everything and skipping a lunch. So it's a great question. I don't know yet, in all honesty, but I would say that's, in general, the philosophy of the faculty.
Are there any other questions?
Dr. Wills, could you, we said 2:34 was one proposed ending time for the middle school and the high school. So what would be the beginning time, and for the elementary school as well, so everyone?
The elementary school would remain as it is. And in fact, we might be able to shorten it would remain as it is, with the possibility that we could start 10 minutes earlier at the elementary school. And that is still not settled, but it looks like we could start 10 minutes earlier at the elementary school and end 10 minutes early, which would mean 3:20 rather than 3:30 in the afternoon. And that seems to have a very positive response from people who see that 3:30 as late.
As we're early for our start time.
Have the microphone in your hand.
We're early start for our high school, we're a late end for our elementary
Yes,
school.
yes.
In comparison to our neighbors.
So I think, that is a possible good outcome. We haven't nailed that down yet, but it could be a good outcome for us.
And the start time for the high school and middle school would then be?
7:50.
Because I don't, it's always difficult when you have a committee do work over months, and then you present that committee work, and then everybody Monday morning quarterbacks the committee work. So, but was there conversation at various increments? For example, 7:30 or 7:40, as opposed to 7:50?
In the beginning, we were looking more at the 30-minute mark, and the 20-minute and the 30-minute mark. And it was only after the committee work ended that we saw the possibility of the 7:50 mark. And the plus of the 7:50 mark was that it gave you a full period. It gave you 40 minutes additional, which, because one of the things that people said over and over, well, you're going to spend this and you're not even going to get a period out of it. And, you're going to get 20 minutes or you're going to get 30 minutes. So our goal was to go as far as we could, and particularly if we could align with the current middle school time, that made, a great deal of sense. But there is no reason that if the board wished to go somewhere else with that time, that would be something to be considered.
But would I assume that if we did go to, let's just say, throw out a number and say 7:40, which gives us half an hour. With the middle school, wouldn't the middle school have to start at the same time?
Well, if we had a two-tier model.
Yes.
I mean, one of the things we talked about was to keep the three-tier model, and what could we do with our start times and keep the three-tier model? Could we get back and forth in time? And that's another question. I think what we're saying is we would create what the board wished to create. We are presenting something that maximizes the possible outcome for the students. And there is a cost associated with it.
Has there been any research, if we start at the same time on both schools, what the traffic impact would be on that? Because obviously it's bad with one school going in at a time. Have we considered what that impact coming and going will be?
Could you come up and talk to that? Mr. Bellino could probably talk to that better than I can, because it has come up as one of the questions.
Stacy, again, being hypothetical, I think the issue would be, I actually think it would be less traffic, as weird as that sounds, only because you're going to have the older siblings driving the younger ones that are presently now being driven in by parents. The reason that parents are driving them in is they're usually on their way to work. It's even our high school kids are getting driven in some cases. No, again, but you have your traffic issue is the parents dropping off. So a number, no matter what year, it's not a lot of seniors, but from junior year, sophomore and freshman, I observe a lot of parents dropping the kids off because really, but I would say the most logical reason is they're on their way to work, so I'll drop you to school. If we started a little bit later, the parents would have to, they'd have to get to their jobs on time, something that they're kind of required to do. And then the kids that would be on the bus, they'd be on the bus with. My belief is that it would actually be less traffic in the again, depending on how many buses you brought in, your traffic would be bus related as opposed to, what the lineup can look like here when it's just, parents dropping off. So, and again, because what you're seeing right now is you got parents dropping off high school kids, you've got parents coming in early to drop off their middle school kids for the morning clubs. So, you're picking all of that up there. So I think if we revamp all of this here, you'd actually see, my belief, again, just my belief at this point, nothing it's only anecdotal, would be that you'd see less traffic.
Any other questions from the, once again, I don't think this is something that is cut and dry or easily considered and determined. There are many, many factors attached to this. What we only know from our perspective is that we started with what would be good for students, for children, for young people, and then went from there. And it's taken us in a variety of directions, but ultimately that's the basic principle upon which we are operating right now. And we see a very strong commitment to providing this in terms of that element, the element of doing something that would benefit students in terms of their well-being, their health, their mood, their mental state, and their academic achievement. Attendance being part of that. So the other part of this issue has to do with whether the community has the will and commitment to support this kind of a project, since there is a cost associated with it. And, that is something where we would have to persuade the community that there is the ultimate goal of a school district is the educational goal, and that this is an aspect of it. It may not be a teaching in the classroom aspect, but it is the larger aspect of how do you create a school that really meets the needs of all of our students. And that's the bigger question, and this is how it compels. So if you think about 500 students in the high school or 600 students in our high school, and you think about the cost, it's it's there, but you're thinking about affecting and impacting 600 students, ultimately. And it's something that definitely to consider as we go forward with the process.
Dr. Wills, we will continue to be discussing this at the board meeting. It's on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
So anybody who is watching live now at home, they can still come here in time for the board meeting that starts in 15, 20 minutes and still have an opportunity to comment. And comments don't end now. Questions don't end now. Feel free to email whoever you need to email. Everybody's email address is on the website, so feel free for any questions or comments. But I want to make sure that we continue to go through and let people know that the board meeting will be starting in about 15 minutes, and it is a topic of conversation. And you can comment from the front page of the district website.
Okay.
When will a decision be made on this by the board? When do you plan on making a decision?
We're looking probably it would be the first meeting or second meeting at the very latest in January. Because it has obviously budget implications and we have to create a budget.
It's part of the creation of the budget. It will not affect the ultimately the bottom line, which we do not intend to. We don't intend to raise above the cap or anything of that nature. We intend to comply with, the tax cap and so on. So it's not a question of impacting that.
I'll have more questions at the board meeting, but one thing I want to make sure that we identify, which I know has already been identified, but at this juncture, the issue of AM clubs in the middle school and how middle school, after school activities may or may not be impacted by the change and how that coordinates with the athletics and clubs that are going on in the middle school. Do we have a 10th period or any of that in the middle school with their schedule being impacted? That's something we definitely need to iron out as well. We don't want to overlook that.
Yeah, and Travis is here to share that information about the middle school. And we can talk about it during the board meeting, or we can talk about it now.
Or both.
Both. Travis, do you want to come up, Mr. McCarty, and talk a little bit about that? About what we have now and what the concerns are that have come up, issues?
Sure. I'm Travis McCarty. I'm the middle school assistant principal. And I can speak to some concerns that have been brought up with the, I guess, later start time of the high school, and that is a lot of middle school students, some parents, some faculty members have been concerned with losing clubs in the mornings. And Dr. Wills has helped us to alleviate those concerns a little bit with possibly having our current bus run continue to come in early in the morning, which would help us to continue with those clubs that happen in the morning. Presently, we have 25 clubs at the middle school and 15 occur before school. So those students actually come in before the middle school starts at 7:40. So they would continue to come in and start at 7 o'clock, which would allow the variety that currently occurs. The after-school clubs, which basically start at 2:40, 2:45, and run until 3:10, that would continue to be a discussion because some of them may have to occur at different times because of sports and whatnot. So that'll continue to be a discussion. Are there any other questions regarding the middle school? I think the main concern was clubs and activities that occur before and after school. Any other questions regarding clubs?
Just remind me, the middle school currently does a 7:50 to 2:30 for the students?
That is correct. Okay. It's actually 7:50 is when our home base starts.
Okay.
And 2:34 is our dismissal time.
Okay.
other question?
So, one of the things we have to do with this schedule is we have to provide a bus, actually probably 3 buses. We have BOCES, and we have parochial school runs. And, if, as I had mentioned at another forum, that I really strongly believe that we wouldn't want to take away something with this process. I would feel very uncomfortable taking away opportunities. And if we are inflexible with any opportunities in the morning, I feel we would be shortening the opportunities for some students. And that is the way it is at the middle school. I don't know how that would operate if we just went with the 10th period at the middle school, since they have the issue even more so with starting early for their athletics, due to our athletic opportunities, right, at this, our facilities. Is that correct? The middle school activities after school, the athletics, do they start at the same time as the high school?
They would not change.
Okay, so
Remain the same, so what you're seeing now is what would occur.
and do they start usually at 2:45 or
Usually as soon as they're let out.
as soon as they're let out?
Trying to wrangle them up and get them busy.
See, part of the issue is that our facilities are, we don't have a plethora of places for students to be. So there is a crunch in our athletic, option.
So the before-school clubs, have they been utilizing the high school bus runs to come in? And so, did you say that we would continue to provide an early bus run for those clubs?
Well, it's the bus, we'll have to provide around 3 buses throughout the district for our BOCES students with this scenario that we're talking about, the later start. Our BOCES student, our parochial students would need to have those 3 buses. So it wouldn't be the same. It's not going to be a bus run that goes through everybody's home. It would be 3 places where people could go to get a variety of places that would have to be set up for schedules so that we could get people to,
So you're suggesting a loop?
yes,
You're suggesting a loop?
type of a loop, yes.
And how many clubs, I know they're probably spaced out during the year, how many clubs are occurring approximately? I know I can't hold you to a number, but approximately at one time throughout the year? Are there 5 clubs meeting now, let's say, and another 6 during the, spring, or how many?
There's about 10 right now.
But they don't meet every day. It's not every day.
Throughout the week, we have, over the course of the year, 15 that start in the morning. And I would say right now, there's about 12 that consistently meet.
And the clubs meet once a week or 3 times a week on average?
We have, let's say, the intramural club. Our intramural club meets 2 times a week. We have our Go Green Club, which recycles. On one day, they recycle bottles and cans. The other day, they recycle paper before school. So really, they usually meet one day a week. Like Go Green is 2 days a week. Intramurals is 2 days a week. But it's usually one day a week before school. Like we have Lego Club, 2 versions of Lego Club, so that's 2 days a week. So they're really spread out evenly throughout the week. There's not one day that really meets more so than others. We try to balance it out so kids have opportunities. If, 5 clubs meet on a Monday, it really limits the opportunity of those kids to experience various clubs. So I want to say we do a pretty nice job of spreading those out throughout the week.
But it's not like the high school where you can do clubs and then go to sports. Essentially, you're choosing in the middle school, correct?
That is correct. And especially, we run into choice with after-school clubs for 7th and 8th graders. So 7th and 8th graders who play sports, really have to choose, and most choose sports, as opposed to doing clubs. But I will tell you, after school, we have art club, which has 30 students 2 days a week. So they actually asked to cap the club at 30 because we have so many students who are interested in creating, and it's really nice to see. But the majority of those kids are 5th and 6th graders as opposed to the 7th and 8th graders because they play sports after school.
Yeah, I was just mainly concerned with getting the morning students to their clubs, that we would have enough transportation available at enough stops to get them there.
I mean, we'll have to look at the details of, are things in the morning, why are some things in the morning as opposed to being in the afternoon? And is that personnel issues? And if it's personnel issues, then that's something we'll need to reevaluate. Because if we have somebody who prefers to coach and have a club in the morning and coach in the afternoon, doesn't mean that we can't have the club in the afternoon. It just means maybe we need to have somebody else running those clubs. I mean, those are things we need to look at.
But keeping in mind, intramurals were changed to the morning because all the places that they would have to do the athletics
I wasn't
are involved
referring
with
to intramurals. I was referring
Right.
to people who coach in the afternoon and have clubs in the morning. But we'll talk about that more at the board meeting.
Okay. Are there any other questions regarding the later start issue? Okay, well, we have about 5 minutes before we start our board meeting. Thank you all very much for coming. This is still an ongoing conversation. We hope to hear from you in a variety of venues. Thank you.